Nog live.
Ja, nu is hij terug live. Check het even, maar normaal is hij terug live. Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. The audio was broken. We are currently organizing the meetups for 2026. So we're looking for speakers and organizations, but we will announce all of that in due time. In the meantime, if you want to speak at one of these events, do reach out. You can reach out via Slack, via Meetup, via LinkedIn, whatever you want. We also have a Sessionize page, but I think it's not working currently. I think we have to re-enable it for 2026. And we will do that once we have the dates for the 2026 events. But do reach out if you want to give a talk. I truly believe that everybody has something that they can do a talk about. You don't have to be a Flutter expert to give a talk here. It's very useful to have people who are just starting out with the framework, explaining their journey, what they're encountering, and it can be a really good learning experience as well for you, because you can get tips from the community, so it's really good. We also have a list of open topics that are requested by the community. If you have some experience in Flutter Flow, for example, and you want to give a talk about it, by all means do. On that same page, if you want to host a Flutter Belgium event, do reach out as well. We are currently pinning dates for 26, or we are going to start pinning dates for 26, I should say. Hosting is very simple. We just need a place, basically good Wi-Fi and some pizza, and that's about it. So it's very simple, and you get a great community in your office. For today, we have two lightning talks. We have Frey, who will be giving a lightning talk, and I will be back to give a short lightning talk as well. And then we have two full talks. Jordi will be talking about code generation, and then Chris, our very own Chris, will do a talk, which has been requested quite a lot actually, on adding Flutter to native apps and React Native apps, how you can do that and how that works, and some of the pitfalls there. At the end, we always do a raffle. I'm looking at Koen. Do we have items to raffle? I didn't check. Okay, we have items to raffle.
Dashes anymore, but I'd rather hats.
Okay, so we have a hat. We don't have dashes. If you want to join the raffle, you can just scan the QR code. If you don't have time now, I'll leave it up for a second. But if you don't have time to scan it, if you scan the banners, you will also end up in the raffle currently. Wat?
Dus nou even de raffle enablen.
Oké.
Maar deze u.
Nee, dit is mijn laptop, die van u ligt daar.
Ah, oké, dat is makkelijk dan.
Okay. If you still want to scan, you can also scan the banners. Also during the break, you can still scan. We do it at the end. We always have some gadgets to give away, so it's a lot of fun to join. A lot of thanks to icapps for hosting us here for the final meetup of 2025. Thanks for the pizza. Thanks for hosting us again, because I think it's the third time that we're here now, maybe the fourth. I'm not sure. We've been here a lot. And then see you in 26. We will announce our locations and meetups as soon as possible. In the meantime, reach out if you want to talk or want to host. And then Frey, it's up to you for your lightning talk. Dit is voor jou.
Let's see. All right. Okay. Welcome everyone. I'm just going to do a very short lightning talk because there's just one nice thing I figured out the past few weeks that I want to share, and apparently a lot of people that I talked to didn't know about this as well. So as you can see, my talk is going to be about widget tests. And to start off, let me quickly recap what type of tests that Flutter framework offers. So we have our basic unit tests. They're just the same as in any other framework. They just run extremely fast. They're very, very easy to maintain, very easy to write, but they do not cover that much. They have a limited scope. Luckily, the Flutter framework provides us with widget tests, which still run quite as fast as unit tests, but they allow you to test UI and integrations and interactions rather, just like a normal user would interact with the app. And they still don't require a device to run on. They don't cover the whole picture, and they're a bit more complex to set up than a normal unit test, but they're a lot easier than integration tests, which is the third type of test that the framework provides. So good things about integration tests is that they provide a high confidence. They really run your app completely, an end-to-end flow, and they really show how the UI will look on the device as well. But they're a lot slower, they're a lot more complex to set up, and they might be brittle and cost some more maintenance. So now that we quickly recapped the three types of tests that you can have in Flutter, I want to ask every one of you, raise your hands if you use any type of automated testing in your apps. I should see everyone's hand, even if you don't, just do it. Okay, keep your hands raised if you're using widget tests. Okay, a lot of hands still up. Keep your hands raised if you use integration tests. And I see a few hands going down. And maybe I see some people nodding their heads, so maybe for some projects, for others, not. And one of the reasons might be that it comes with some extra complexity, especially for figuring out where and when you want to run these. If you want to connect it to your CI/CD flow, it might be a little harder. And that's where like the true value of widget tests actually come in. You get a lot covered by widget tests without having to set up the infrastructure to run integration tests. But one of the hard things about integration tests could be to figure out, let me just see, when something goes wrong, because it still acts and runs just like a normal unit test. So for this, I want to show a quick example. Let's run a very simple app on our emulator. There we go. We all love counter apps, right? So we're Flutter developers, of course we do. So yeah, we just have a counter with a simple button to test this. So let's have a look at our widget test for this. This is a simple widget test that will actually take in my whole app. It will check if everything's there. It will tap the increment button, and then it should have changed, and it should have found an extra increment on the value. But if we try to run this, turns out something went wrong. And if we go into this, it said that things were not found exactly. So something seems to be wrong. But I can see here, like this works fine, right? Does anybody have an idea why this is? Does anybody know what went wrong? Well, it's sometimes hard to figure out, but luckily there's an easy trick that I want to share with you, because the cool thing with widget tests is that you can actually simply run them as well on your device without having to move to integration tests for this. So what this will do is it will use our Flutter app to also visualize our widget tests. And you see we get like a weird frame. This is because a normal widget test by default, the view that you get is 800 by 600 pixels. So this is actually the issue that we have here. So if we were to change this, and we add in a change to change the surface size. I don't know if this is clear for everyone. Maybe you can put it a little bit bigger. And let's just hot reload this, or at least from here. It's going to hot reload, and suddenly our view changes to a different proportion. And it just goes through our test as well. Now everything works. So the reason I wanted to show this is that we can, even though widget tests generally run without rendering on a specific device, you could still just use Flutter run and run that widget test just to have a visual ID what's going wrong. So this was just a simple way to show this if you would ever encounter that. So let's see. So you can just use Flutter run and target your test file just like you would target your main.dart file. And by doing that, we can go from not understanding why our widget test is failing to really understanding and being as surprised by how awesome it is. All right, thank you. Any questions on this? All right. Start using this neat little trick. Yeah.
All right. Hi again. Okay, I want to give a very quick lightning talk about mixins and private properties and how they can work in Flutter. Some of you might know this. It's something that the Flutter team does on their YouTube channel. Every week they do a widget of the week, where they highlight a widget in the Flutter framework that is either new or that they think deserves like a quick explanation because it's cool or maybe it's not used enough or something like that. And at the beginning of the year I thought, hey, that would be nice to do it for our meetups and do widget of the meetup. And we had 3 this year, I think, right? Yeah, 3. We had Baseline, we had Ticker Mode, Koen did that one, and then we had Link by Chris. And I thought, okay, 3, that's really good. Let's try and do a 4th one, but let's mix it up and let's do code snippet of the meetup. So I basically just kept the of the original concept, and all the rest is new. Because this is something that I came across last week, I think, and I thought it was neat. I didn't know you could do it, so I thought, let's share it with the Flutter Belgium community. Small disclaimer before I start. This code snippet is just 1 line of code. So the end result is very unimpressive, but I do need a little bit of a story to get to it and for it to make sense as to why I did it. So bear with me as I take you on this little journey that hopefully won't take too long. So first of all, the problem. So the problem is I'm working on a very large service. And the file that this service is in is starting to get very large. And for this specific scenario, it doesn't really make sense to say like, okay, but then this service needs to be split up into separate services and you need to refactor your code a little bit. It kind of makes sense that it is one big service. And I need to implement a new feature on this service, which will add like at least 200 lines of code to it. And I don't really want to add more to this already large file. So how do I want to solve this? I kind of want this file to be split into smaller files because then they're easier to read, easier to manage. It makes a little bit more sense. But I want to keep one public interface on this service. So how could I solve this? I think 4 scenarios come to mind to me on how you could tackle this. Maybe there are more. Talk to me if I missed obvious solutions. The first one being don't. Just keep it as is, add to the service and ignore the problem. The second one would be to write an extension on that service and then use part off to keep the extension private. If you don't know what part off directives are in Dart, basically they allow you to compose things over multiple files, and a lot of code builders use it, for example. You can have your interface in one file and then say like the rest of this file is in this file, and then they're sort of merged together and you can keep classes private, but they are merged into one file for the Dart compiler. Third option would be to kind of create implementation classes under this interface and then divide the work like that and divide it into subclasses that way, and then also use part off to make sure that the classes can be kept private and not be exposed to the rest of your code base. Or I could write a mixin and then also use part off. So the first one, obviously, we're not going to do that one. That's just mean. And you always want to leave the code better than you found it, so we're not going to not do it. The second one is we're not going to write an extension because, bear in mind, I want to keep that one interface. And extensions cannot implement part of an interface. If I would do that, I would get errors on the base class because I'm not implementing my full interface. So that won't work. The second one could work, but I would have to basically pass a lot of stuff around. It could work, but apart from being very large, this service also has a lot of dependencies, and I don't want to be drilling all of these dependencies down into these subclasses, and I don't want to be dealing with that. So I kind of don't want to do that one either. So that leaves me with mixins to go forth. So let's implement that solution. So this is a very simplified example of the very large service that I'm dealing with. Let's call it the interface is Flutter Belgium, and there are 2 methods on there. You have the get welcome and you have a get welcome with location. The get welcome, you can just implement that on your the way you would normally do, but you can already see the red squiggly line. I haven't fully implemented my interface, so there's an error there. Next, I would write a mixin on that interface and note the part off, so I'm indicating that it's part of that file, so it can be private. I implement part of that interface, and if I then complete my work and I add the part file to the original file, I add the mixin to the class, no more squiggly line, the interface is fully implemented. And for external code, I can call get welcome, I can call get welcome with location. Both of them work, but they're in separate files. It's easier to manage. But there's some extra complexity, and for that, I'm going to dive into Firebase Studio. It's the very first time I've used Firebase Studio, so I'm very excited. I've finally found a use for Firebase Studio. So we'll take a look at the implementation. So we have my interface here, the way that I had it before. But now you'll notice that I added a model. So this is data. Imagine that this is just some data. It can come from anywhere, but this is a data model, for example. And it's private on the Flutter Belgium class, right? So here in the get welcome, I could call welcome data.organization, and it would output welcome to Flutter Belgium if I call that method. That's fine. But if I now go to my mixin, whoops, the solution is still here. Whoops, you didn't see that. I get an error because I cannot access that private property on my mixin because I'm not on the implementing class. I'm implementing this on the interface, and the interface does not have this private property. And I was looking at this and I was kind of stumped, like, how do I solve this? What can I do? And the cool thing here is you might have already spotted it because I left it in there. Because we are implementing on this interface, I can actually do this, this as Flutter Belgium, Flutter Belgium .data, and that will work. That will compile, and it will give you access to private properties on an implementation class, which I thought was pretty neat, and I didn't know you could do that. So I thought I'd share. So that brings us to the snippet of this meetup is when creating a mixin on an interface, you can use this syntax to access private properties on your implementation class. That's it. Thank you very much. Het is er nu. Heb jij de recording stopgezet? Ja, top.
Okay, test. Yes. Okay. So for the first talk, or the first big talk, Jordi will talk about code generation. We've had a couple of topics about this, so I'm pretty interested to see what you will explain us today. So yeah, Jordi will be empowering your Flutter work flow with code generation, and that will be the talk for now. Check.
Yes, so I'm going to give you a talk about code generation and how you can just work faster and not do a lot of repetitive tasks. But first, I'm going to give an introduction to icapps, because I'll be representing icapps today, and icapps is hosting today's meetup. We started in 2009. We made the first, or I think one of the first, or the first iOS app in Belgium. The Solo Kitchen app. I don't know if anybody has ever used it, but was very handy in the time, I think. But now we have a lot of apps under our belt. I think this number is an older number, so it's more than that now. Also a lot of returning customers, so that's what we really want to do. We want to do a long-term, be a partner throughout their entire process. We have around 100 digital experts. Those are not only mobile developers, but also backend developers. Design, we do a lot of different stuff. And we really want to enrich everyday life. So we choose which projects we take on, only those that are useful for everyday life. We're not going to make gamble apps or anything. I think we normally we don't do that. So it has to align with our goals, which is very important to us. We do a lot of different platforms. So basically every platform that you need, we make apps for. We also do the process in the beginning. So if we start with a customer, we do the think phase. So we together with them think, what do you want? Then we do the UI UX stage. We make designs. Then we make the application, and then afterwards we provide care if it's done throughout the years. We're also hiring Flutter developers, also freelance Flutter developers. So if you are interested, you can always scan the QR codes, or after the meetup, you can, I think on LinkedIn, we have there have jobs open, or you can just talk to someone at icapps here, Hannes standing there, or anyone else. Yeah. So yeah, that was the introduction over. Now I'm going to talk about code generation. First of all, very important, it's not necessarily AI. I'm not going to talk about AI today, which is hopefully a relief to most people here. Because you can, of course, generate code with AI. You can use IDEs like Windsurf and Cursor to generate code, but that's not what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about code generation for like small sections, just to speed yourself up, not to say, hey, build my app, and then the app is done, and then you have to fix everything. It's more to speed up your process than replace you. So there's multiple ways to do code generation. So technically, code generation is just like in the name. You generate a piece of code. So just writing a string to a file. If you write a class to a file, then you did code generation, which is the most simple form, which is very useful if you want to do simple automations. The first two packages that I'm going to talk about later are just a simplistic form. And then if you want to get fancy, you can do complex code generation, which is going to plug into Build Runner, which I think most of you here use Build Runner. You can add an extra builder on top of it, and that's going to run with all the rest of the builders you already have. You can also say if you want to run before builders or after builders. So it's a very powerful way to do code generation and to just automate it every time. Very important when to use it. So like I already said, it's more for very specific use cases. You're not going to make entire apps with it, but for boilerplate, it's very handy. Large amounts of code. If you're just doing the same thing like 3 times in total, then it's not really useful to automate it, because then, yeah, the automation is going to take more time than just writing it 3 times. But for example, on Navigator, you're going to add routes like every day, so it's very handy to automate that process that you don't have to do that every time. Easily configurable. What I mean with that is there's not a lot of parameters, like you know exactly the output you want to get. It's always going to be the same. There's no thinking that has to happen. You just switch out some variables and then you get the result that you want. And yeah, repetitive code, a little bit the same as boilerplate, but like if you're doing it every day, if you're adding a line to a class every day, then maybe you should automate that process instead of doing that every time. Then how to implement it. You can, like I said, just do code generation by write a string to a file, but there's some tools that will help you. The one that I use a lot is Code Builder. Both of the packages are by tools.dart. But Code Builder basically just gives you easy methods and classes to generate to generate Dart code. So instead of just saying write this class and then doing an entire string that says how the class has to look, to use SourceGen. This is the package that allows you to add extra builders to existing builders, and that's going to do all the stuff behind the scenes, so you can plug into Build Runner. Then I'm going to show you 3 packages that I made, because 3 packages that I saw some problems or some things that could be faster, and that helped me with accomplishing that. So I hope this is just an inspiration for you to see in your own workflow what can I automate, what can be better, and what types of things you can automate with code generation. So the first one is the icon generator. The problem was that when implementing our designs, every time you implement a screen, you have to look for, okay, do I have an icon here? Then you have to export that icon. You have to add it to your local We call it the theme assets file. It's just basically where you store all the paths to your icons. Problem with that is you can make mistakes in the path name, and then your icon doesn't show up, and then you have to change it again, and you changed your asset name, so maybe you have to completely rebuild your app, and it's just annoying. If you're working with multiple people on one app, a lot of the time some people just export the same icon twice in a different color and with a different name, and then you have two X's, and one is called close and one is X, and then yeah, it's just get messy real quickly because it's you don't really have an overview of what is in your app and whether we still have to add. So the solution for that is, first of all, we made an icon library, or now we, our designers, made an icon library, which basically houses most of the icons you need to make a mobile app. They're still working on it. Then we turn that icon library into a font. This step is not needed, but it's how most icon libraries work. So it's just easy that you can easily plug into other packages that provide icons. It's just to say the way that Flutter does it, using the icon widget and then doing icons dot. That's also a font. And then last, the most important part is generating your code. So we don't want to every time add every icon separately. We want to generate this to make our lives just easier. I had to plug this from the designers, but our icon library is called Iconic. There's 442 icons. You can use it also. The package is called icapps icons, and if you want to use it, you can just use it, add it to your Flutter project, and use it the same way as you use material icons. So the before is this one. So first we had every icon is a separate path, and we just manually added it every time. After is how it's generated right now. It looks a little different because, again, it's now a font. But this makes it very easy to just automatically generate everything. We also have documentation on top of it. I don't know if you can see that, but the documentation adds the preview. That's very handy that you can hover over your icon and you see the preview of the icon. And then below you can see how you use it in your code. So it's just exactly the same as you use it in Flutter. Or the material icons, but then it's called icapps icons instead of icons. It's a very small package, so I can quickly go through it, how I implemented this. So most of it is in the shell script, actually. The majority of this is turning it into a font. It's apparently not that easy to turn everything into a font. You have to do some special stuff, so it doesn't look broken. And also generating the previews. But afterwards, when we have everything, we have our font, we generate a .ttf file. This is basically just your font, but turning it into XML so you can read out some information like the name of the font, the name of the character, and the position of that character in the font. Because a font's just one big file, so you have to know the location of every icon you want to show. And once we have all of that, we go to our parser. This is not that much code. We basically just say, we search where the location of that icon is, and then we generate our code. And this, what you see here, this class file, is what I showed before with Code Builder. This is just a package used to make the string. So you can just manually type this, but this is, I think, in my opinion, way easier and cleaner to read. So we just make one class, icapps icons, and then we add fields to it, and these fields are the different icons that we show. And you can see icons. This is the class that we generate using this small snippet of code. And it's very handy, because now in the recent projects we use this, and now you can just always use, I need a card icon, and we already have the card icon. If you hover over it, you can see the preview of the icon. Which is very handy. And then we don't have the issue anymore of people duplicating icons or having to export it every time, and just speeds up the process a lot. So that was the icons. Like I said before, you can use the icon package on icapps icons. This is just the icons, nothing of the generation of the icons. I think I'm going to make a different package for that, and then not do the whole turning it into a font thing, but you can choose if you want to turn it into a font or just drop all your SVGs into an icon folder and then generate the rest. But yeah, that was the icons package. Then another thing we really want to automate was remote config. The problem that we had was every time you add a new flag to the remote config, it takes a lot of time. Because you have to go to we use Firebase, you have to go to Firebase, add it there, you have to go to your codes, you have to add that you receive, you have to add that specific line there as well. See that the keys match. If you have mismatching keys, then yeah, it's not going to work. And most of the times you add a default value to your remote config, so you might not even see that it doesn't work until it's already pushed to production, and then you change something in remote config and it doesn't do anything, and then you have to make a new release. So to avoid all that, it's easier to just generate it so you know it's always correct. Also, not every developer always adds everything to the remote config. They just add it in the code, and I'm talking about you, William. They just add it in the code and not in Firebase, and then you don't. It's just a mess because you don't know what's in the code, what's in the Firebase. So to fix all that, I made a generator which should simplify that process. Using two things, the remote config API. So Firebase just provides an easy remote config API that you can access, and you can just get all the values through an API instead of using the tool online. You have to authenticate with the Google API's auth library first, but it's not that hard. You just need a service.json file or something similar, and you can authenticate. And then similarly to before, we just generate the response that we want. So this is just a small snippet of, again, the code builder package. We just add the fields and the constructor, and then on the right is what you get. So this is all automatically generated based on what I inputted on Firebase and the Firebase console. Also, this I can show real quick. So we first start by reading the config. So what you see in a lot of code builder packages, and it's very handy to have, is a config. It just allows you to change some stuff like here before. For example, I don't have a lot of config, but you need to say path to your credentials, to your Google service credentials for Firebase, and yeah, your project ID, so we know which project to look for. You can just read that using the YAML library of YAML package, and you can easily read your config. Then we authenticate with the remote config, and we get the values from remote config. And then again, we just do the same thing. We build everything using the code builder package. I think the most important one is the remote config data. It looks like a long file, but again, this is all very simple stuff. I'm just using the code builder syntax to make my class is then fed by the values I got back from the remote config API. And the result is that I have, I think, remote config data. I just get all of this, and I know these keys will always 100% be correct because I fetched them live from the API. So this is now a very small remote config, but if you have 200 values or something, it's very handy to generate all this. So you can just add everything online, and then you just run the script, and it works. It also automatically gives you the default values that you supplied online. So if you can't access, if your user can't access your remote config because he's offline or something, then it's going to automatically use the correct default values. Because those are also sometimes you forget to update them, and then they don't have internet, and then they use a wrong default value, and yeah, it could cause a lot of problems. But again, it's a very easy thing. The hardest part is getting the data that you want to generate, but the generating part is very easy, and it saves a lot of time. And I think then the last package, and this is not a simple package. This is the widget book generator, which is basically a generator for the widget book generator that already exists. That's why I have an amazing name, widget book widget generator, because widget book generator was taken already. But basically what this fixes is, I don't know how many of you already use widget book, but if you have used it, you know that you have to create use cases every time that you want to add a widget to the widget book. Problem with this is that you have to do this for every widget you want to add. So first you make your widget, and then you have to not forget that you have to make a use case for this widget. Then you have to give it correct default values. If you want it to be editable in the widget book UI, then you have to make knobs out of those items. If it's an enum, then you have to also make a knob out of that. So it's a lot of extra steps. So I think most of the time when people use widget book, they're like, oh yeah, that's going to be very easy. It's going to be so useful for the designers to check our UI. And then after four or five widgets, nobody updates it anymore and nobody uses it anymore. And then it's a lot of wasted time. And to avoid that, I made a generator which makes it very easy to just add one annotation on top of a widget, and the rest gets generated automatically. So it looks like this. You have a button, for example, and all you have to add is on the top widget book widget, at widget book widget. I'm still thinking of a better name, but this is what I found so far. But that's all you have to add on top of widget to add it to widget book. So no more making the use case. So on the right is actually what you had to do before. So I'm not doing anything new or something. I'm just generating the stuff widget book needs to generate their use cases. So before you had to do a Boolean knob, and then a list knob with then all the options of your enum, and you had to add all this yourself, and now it just gets automatically generated. It also supports named constructors, so the test button and the test button.text is going to be separate lines in the widget book UI. And as you can see, I use annotations here. So this is the complex way of using code generation, which uses the source gen package that I said before. So I'm going to go through this very quickly because I don't have enough time, I think, to go into too much detail because there's a lot going on. But if you want more info about this, you can, the way I did it, just look at the injectable package. It does something similar. I think William's Flutter Navigator package is also something similar. So you can just steal those ideas. And these ones are also, the widget book widget generator is also on pubdev. So if you want to steal from that, that's also fine. But simply, to go through it quickly, is you can add builders in your build.yaml file. I think this syntax should be sort of, you should have seen this before if you have experience with build runner before, because you can, in the build.yaml file, you can say which runners go first and which runners can only look at specific files and stuff to speed up your build runner process. But here we can just define our different builders. I have two builders. One goes through every widget that you annotate. So I have the widget book widgets annotation. And I basically just want to collect all of the widgets that have that annotation. And I'm going to make one big JSON file out of them. The reason that I make a JSON file out of that is the default way that build runner works is it's going to generate a generated file for every widget with an annotation. So for example, the test button widget that I showed before, if I do add widget book widget on top of it, what it wants to do is generate a testbutton.g file, but that's not what we want. We don't want a file for every widget that we annotate. We just want to collect all of the info and then dump that into one big use cases file. And to do that, we use we turn it into JSON. So it just looks like this. It's called a generator. And we just go through all the widgets, we collect them, and then we encode them and turn them into one big JSON file, which then in the next generator, so this is a generator for an annotation, and my annotation is called app. So this annotation is going on top of your, or above your widget book app, because every widget book needs an app as well. And this is going to then use that JSON. So it's called widgetconfig.json, or that's just the name I gave it. And it's going to use all that info to then, again, generate what I want. And then we're just back to the code builder package. That's going to take all that info and use it to make all the methods, because use cases are just methods. So I just have one big, I think I can show the file. It's just one big file of hundreds of lines that has a use case for every single widget. You don't normally have to look at this anymore. This will then get automatically generated. And this is actually all the code that it needs to generate that. The reason this is so complex is because you still have to do the extra work to resolve the imports, because if you use a custom class, then you have to add those imports, and all that extra stuff makes it a little complex. But just generating this stuff is really not that much time if you just use SourceGen together with Code Builder. And I think that was largely what I wanted to show. If there's any questions, you can ask them now, or if there's any later questions, you can ask them to me directly on LinkedIn, just as Jordi de Jonge. Yeah, I think that was my time. Thank you for listening. So are there questions or no? Yes.
Great talk, thank you. I was curious, when do you generate these things? Is it always the developer that runs a generate command for this, or does some of these actually run in pipelines as well?
So the first two are just, like I showed you, shell scripts that you have to run yourself. For example, the icapps icons one is just a package, so every time our designers give us a new version of the iconic library, or if there's just enough new icons, then you just run it and then you publish a new version. We're looking into automating this, but it's now, it takes like a couple of seconds and then we publish it, so we haven't automated it yet, but it's something you can just add to your pipeline if you want, because it's just a shell script. The third one is when you plug it to build runner, it's just every time you run build runner. So like if you add new, if you use injectable and you add new view models or anything, that's when it's going to run. So it might be important, if you already have this, to define in your build.yaml file that you only want to run this for specific files, because otherwise your build runner is going to take up a lot of time. So you might have to optimize it a little bit, but yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yes.
For the remote config package, do you support multiple environments? If you're, for example, managing feature flags in remote config, do you support that already?
Right now, we don't support multiple environments, because most of the times our environments are the same, or we just have the same values, just the default value is different. So we just normally take the production one and then generate, because that's the only thing we use is the values or the keys that we need, and the default values, which are normally the same between them two. Actually, fetching the remote config is something completely different. That's going to be environment specific.
Okay.
So you just have to implement that in your app. The generator only gives you, okay, this is the model for your remote config, but fetching it yourself, or fetching it, you do yourself. So you can then still support those things.
Thanks.
What happens if your client wants other icons? Are you just not using the icapps icons, or is it possible to just overwrite the icons in a way?
That's why I wanted to create a separate package, but right now everything we do is just with it's project specific. So most of the times for that project we just use icapps icons. And we usually already have all the icons, because we first have the design and then we start development. So just pull in the icons before we start development. If there's like last minute icons changes, we can just update the package. But I also want to add the separate package that you can just do it yourself, that you just give a file of SVGs, a little bit like we do it now, but then generate the paths, so you don't have to add those manually.
So the idea is that icapps will always use the same icons for all projects in the future then?
Yeah.
Okay.
The icons are customizable, so you can change like the border radius and stuff like that. So I think the idea is to have like different flavors, like default, squarish, and then those are just then you have icapps icons dot something, and then icapps icons square dot something. You can just add like different families because it's just a font, so it's just a different font family. If you want a different style, then.
Okay, cool. Any other questions? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so next talk, very interesting one. I know it's an interesting one because I've been working with Up in Up as well. Jens has been working with Up in Up as well, Chris as well. I think. Who else here in the room? Only one. You know how hard it can be. So I think it's very interesting to see a talk that will explain a little bit how it works and what it is, why it's useful, and why it is so complex. So give it up for Chris, who will be talking about Up in native and React Native as well.
All right. First slide. Who am I? Most of you already have seen me, I guess. Only the new joiners, and welcome, of course. I started as a Java developer long time ago. I don't know how long. And then I had some dark days or years in PHP development. And then, I became an Android developer. Now it became very overwhelming also, I would say. And in 2018, I saw Flutter popping up, and I started the meetup. One of my first talks, I think on the second meetup, was about how to combine Unity in Flutter. So adding Unity in Flutter, and now I'm giving a talk to add Flutter into a native application. So a bit related maybe. And at this moment I'm a developer, Flutter developer of course, at InvestSuite. InvestSuite is creating financial applications. And the side project is eitjesradar.app. That's a side project of mine where you can see where the ice trucks are, and you can also get a notification when he's passing by and something like that, or you can call him. Add Flutter to an existing app. Is it rocket science? I think the answer is yes, but also a bit no. No. Because in the end, at least for iOS and for Android, what is happening when you start an iOS and an Android app, the Flutter engine will start and it gives you the screen. So for iOS and Android, it's lots of things can be reused and is actually the same. Why it is rocket science? Yeah, when you think of a rocket, mostly the build pipeline of, for example, a React Native SDK, building your app as a React Native SDK can easily take 50 minutes, and sometimes it fails after 45 minutes, and then you fix it again or try to fix it again, you rerun it, and so that's the rocket thing. Well, I'm going to, where can you add it? Of course, I'm talking now about Android and iOS. I'm also going to talk about React Native. Of course, Flutter, giving your application or your SDK to another developer which also uses Flutter. That's also possible. Or adding it to a web in web, so Flutter in another React Native application or just plain web. Why would you do it? Probably you want some code reuse between iOS and Android or something like that. The most benefits of the Flutter website you can get. But it's also a bit like maybe you don't want to, or you don't have the budget to do everything from scratch, and then you can actually start with maybe one flow, moving into Flutter and starting that one. And of course, Flutter is more fun than doing React Native stuff, so that's also a reason why you would try to switch at least. First, it all starts with creating a module. Normally, you do Flutter create to create your application, but there is also a module template. But maybe just try that. You just clear, because I already tried it, of course, before the no problem. I'm using FEM. Okay. What does it look like? It generates, you probably recognize, it's the counter app. What is also the same here, your Flutter YAML file, but there is a small additional step here that is telling you the Android and the iOS package or native part that is going to be used. You also see an .iOS and a .android file that is actually automatically generated. The good thing is that you can Flutter module, you can just run your module, because that's also useful, I think, to see what you're doing and not having to wait until you can test it in React Native or in iOS. No, not this one. Okay, it takes me not too long. Okay, ta-da! This is Flutter as a module, step 1. Let's go back. So it creates a hidden Android and iOS folder just because then you can test it. Then, when you have your Flutter module, you can check the website from Flutter. They explain how to add it to an Android and an iOS application. First step here is you can create your AAR file, and for iOS it's a framework file. And then it explains you what you need to do to add it to your Android application. Then, when that is there, in your Android application, you normally, if you're running a Flutter application, the engine starts automatically and it opens an activity with the Flutter inside of it. This is something you will have to do manually now. So you can start the Flutter engine here. You can create a fragment or an activity with it, and then you can even start communicating with it. The communication between Flutter and native is always via method channels. If you have, for example, a Google Maps plugin or something like that, and you have a Flutter application, inside is a native widget, they talk with method channels, but it's also possible the other way around. If your app is native and you're embedding a Flutter thing, you can also reuse the same system. So very briefly, you build your AAR file, you add it to your Android project, make sure you start the Flutter engine, you can show the UI and you can communicate. How it works on iOS, a bit the same, different command of course. You have to do some magic stuff to your pod file. At this moment, the support for, they mostly support still is Cocoa pods, but they are still migrating to Swift Package Manager. Here also you can start the engine. What is a Flutter engine? Maybe good to explain. At the moment that you start the engine, your main.dart file is going to run, but maybe you have an application defined in there. That application itself is not yet there because you don't have a view, but your Dart code from the main.dart file is already running. It's the moment that you create a fragment or an activity that you will see what's happening. For iOS, it's a bit the same. For React Native, there is an easy way. You can, in React, you can define, in Java or in Kotlin methods, and then you can say, okay, this method should be available from React, and then you can call that method. And here, what is it doing? It's just showing or starting a Flutter activity, which means maybe somebody pressed a button in React. In React Native, you press the button and you suddenly see a full screen Flutter. That's possible, but it has some downsides. Yeah, it's a full screen. It's an activity. The better approach would be that for maybe your just a snippet from a React Native application, where you can then say here, maybe I want to render it here because the top and the bottom, or I want to render it as a view. All kinds of use cases are possible. But that's not so easy. So I was thinking while creating the talk, let's create a new package, which is called Flutter Embedding, and just only pushed it today, so it's still fresh. And maybe I can no, click on it. No, this is not. All right, 7 hours ago. What does it do? The thing is, it's actually very hard to add Flutter. As a React Native developer, it's hard to do all those Flutter methods like, hey, now I need to do this Cocoa pods, then I have to run this Flutter engine, but I don't want to do Flutter. I'm a React developer, or an iOS native developer. I just want to use, the stuff I'm used to. So that's the thing I wanted to achieve is actually you have the Flutter embedding module, which is something you just add to your module, and then it already adds iOS, Android native code. And when you then build your AAR file or your framework file, the iOS or Android developer doesn't have to be start my Flutter engine and with all that kind of methods. And the good thing also here is it gives you an easier way of communicating. So the way you normally talk to an SDK is you start it up and you invoke some methods. Not that you need to start a method channel and start thinking like, oh, how do I communicate or how does it work? So I have actually two plugins, and I wanted to separate them because what is the CLI doing? If you have a module, and I created some CLI commands, you can see them here. It will generate your iOS or your Android just to make it easier. It's only switching this and this. You don't have to do a lot, but the good thing also here is you can generate an example. So just with this command, it will generate an iOS SDK, but it will also generate an iOS example file. And I will briefly show you how it looks. Wait, yeah, let's Dart or Flutter, doesn't matter. with an example, of course. Sorry. Did I type something wrong? Probably yes. All right. It takes some time, but Android is the fastest one, so should be fine. All right. So now what we have in the build folder, an Android example. Yeah, let's open it with Android Studio. Maybe. And then okay, that was too fast. I think it's still building, but you already see what is the outcome. So the example project, what it actually does is it shows you a UI of stuff that the Android application itself will probably have to do. You have to do the start engine, but in the documentation it's one line of code, and then you can decide like, okay, I want to open it as a separate thing. Here you see our counter app, and I cannot go back. No, sorry. It was going back. Okay, anyway. But you can also open it here inside of a view actually. For example, what you get out of the box is, for example, the theming and the languages. That's something you will also almost always have to communicate from the super app to the app, because the super app decides if it's dark or light. Yeah, here you can see it's communicating in the end via an meta channel, but you don't have to use the meta channel. You can just say set it to dark. The language, I just changed the title of the language because yeah, it's a counter app. Yeah, there is also it's also working in the opposite direction. So you can communicate from Flutter to the super app. And here it says hello, and then here I show a pop-up. Okay, I received that, or maybe the Flutter part is full screen, and you want to exit. Then you can send an exit event to your Android application, and then they say like, okay, the widget dispose it. As long as the engine keeps on running, it stays there. So the state is still there. But if you stop it and start it again, then it's 0. Yeah, it's dark because I switched the theme here. How does it look here in the close it. How does my app look like? Not this one. New. Okay, you have the main method, and the embedding controller is something you get from the Flutter embedding widget plugin. You get it. And then on that embedding controller, you can do now. You can call the exit method. You can listen for what the theme is, but you can also invoke custom communication. I named it handovers. You hand something over to the super app. Sometimes it's just just saying, just exit me, I'm done. My wizard, I'm a flow, everything is okay. Or sometimes your super application, your Android or iOS application, that is doing the authentication probably. If you're logged in, the super app is having the access token. Maybe your Flutter app needs it, and then your Flutter app can say, like, via a handover, give me an access token, and it will return it back. That's also a way to do it. You can invoke give me, and it will return maybe an answer or an error, of course. So that's the thing. And then also, yeah, for React Native, how that works. What it does, let's just run it, or just. Okay, so what happens in the background of the CLI is actually for the example applications and for the React Native plugin I'm generating. I'm actually using Mason. I'm not sure if you heard of it. Mason, you can give it in a location and say okay, here on GitHub is my example project, and replace these text with this text, to fix the URLs and the package names and so on. So that's a bit what's happening now. It's maybe getting over the internet, but it's also much slower, of course, React Native. What it also does is there is a lot of stuff happening with Cocoa Pods. For example, if your Flutter module depends on Google Maps, then it's already depending on native stuff. So then you have to merge that with your Cocoa Pods of and yeah, that was I think 3 or 4 nights of work to get it right. Okay, I will just. The thing is, on iOS and on React Native, the example looks the same. Okay, let's go. Build React Native. Run. No, npm install, I guess. Yeah, here again, you already see what it looks like. I try to make it the same as the native one, of course, with the same functionalities. Nothing special here. So yeah, that's it. All right. Then you think, oh, I see a counter app. It works. I just have to write Dart code and I'm fine. But no, of course. Imagine, of course, you want to embed it in your Android application. It's a React Native one. You embed Flutter, but inside your Flutter you want to show a Google Maps or a web view. Yeah. That's then it starts getting weird. On iOS it works, but on Android, React Native is using their own layout manager to lay out all the stuff or even the native widgets, and they don't talk to each other with Flutter and yeah, of course. So also part of the embedding plugin, I gave you the React Native component wrapper. So if you embed that, it will, when some resizes are happening or something like that, it will do a meta channel invoke. You don't have to do it manually. And on the native side, on Android, I'm then saying to the layout manager of React Native, hey, you have to resize now. And then it works. So again. Then about communication, I already said method channels is a good thing, but it's not always easy because you're Android or iOS developer, you just want to give an SDK to him. You don't want to say like, oh, now you have to learn Flutter. There is a possibility with Pigeon. That's a package from Flutter itself, and they already use it to you generate actually the Android and the iOS messages or class files, and also the Dart class files based on your specification. So the thing is that with Pigeon you can actually start doing calls and with messages, and it's automatically generated to iOS, to Swift actually, to Kotlin I guess, and so on. But there was a problem. React Native, we from InvestFit, we had to also support React Native, and then we came into big troubles. But there is a guy named Diskwriter. I'm not sure if somebody already know who he is. He created, he forked the Pigeon and added support for TypeScript generation. So at this moment my plugin is not yet using it, but I think there are future plans to have a look at it, and we are already using this one at InvestFit, but it was not easy to just add it to the. And then also I was thinking like, okay, Pigeon is fine, but gRPC can actually also work. gRPC is also, so you can define your messages, you can do method calls. Does somebody know who Diskwriter is? Sorry, previously. It's Jens, of course. So for gRPC also, you define your proto specs where with messages and service calls, and in the end, the way you, normally you communicate via HTTP to your server, but you can actually, it's easy to change that protocol and connect it to a method channel. So that's also an opportunity that we can maybe start using. So I was thinking of my roadmap already because I just pushed it. Now the next steps. Of course, Swift Package Manager. A lot of clients are already asking like, hey, I'm an iOS developer, I don't want to use Cocoa Pods anymore. You have to support Swift Package Manager. So okay, it's going to be I don't know. I did not have a look into it. Maybe it's easy, maybe it's not. Or and then also thinking what I'm going to add first, maybe the Pigeon stuff or the gRPC to make it even easier to communicate. And now my package supports like now set the theme mode to dark, now set the language, or the at startup use production in or develop environment. That's there, but I want to extend it to that. If at the create command you can say like, this is all the communication I want to do. Just generate it. And then also would like to add web support, of course. And then also I wanted to generate a Flutter example, and that's in the beginning I said you can just run a module as a Flutter application, but then you get it full screen. But then it's not easy to, like the authentication and so on. Your example app is something that you want to have. And then like say, okay, now I want to have dark mode and so on. So that UI, it's probably not that much of work. I also wanted to create for Flutter. Because in the end, when you're working on your project, you don't want to run it as a React Native application and then start doing hot reload and stuff. If you can just run it as a Flutter app, then it will be much easier. It's possible. If you run it on a simulator, you can, how to debug your module. And the first one is actually just Flutter run. That works, but you have the downside of that embedding and that communication that you cannot test. What also works is Flutter attach. At least I tested it with a simulator. You can just connect to it and you get the correct scope. Maybe also an important one, mostly I can show you in the here. I did it wrong probably. If I change this to dark, you see at the top the icons are going away. I will do it again. When you go dark at the top, they go away. What's the problem? At that moment, Flutter says to your Android system, "Hey, I'm dark mode. You can have white icons. It's okay." But if you embed your Flutter in an application like this, not having it full screen, you don't want to do that. So keep in mind that you can disable that, but you have to disable it. But maybe if you're the people that will implement your SDK, your Flutter application, you have to ask, will you show it full screen or will you show it as part of the screen? Because then you have to decide, I need to do this or not. Also a thing that we had troubles with is, for example, if you use Sentry, you use the Sentry Flutter package, because that works and you get native crashes out of the box and so on. But if you have a React Native application and they are also using Sentry, then it's not the correct version or something like that, or even with the same version. But no worries, there is also a Sentry package. Yeah? The Sentry package is the Dart package, only doing Dart. It's not handling native crashes. But it's but for as a module, it's perfectly fine to do that. You can. And then I also wanted to show briefly how web could look. It's not mine. It's not mine thing, but here, this is actually also a React Native application, a React counter and a Flutter counter, where you can. This guy is also a bit showing like what is possible with communication, but I wanted to create a plugin that it's easier, and this guy created. You can watch the source code, but it's very hard to read and to do it every time, I guess. All right, yeah, some useful links. Those two packages, I'm just uploaded them. I see I'm still missing a link to the source code. That's a newbie issue, I think. Here the source code. The source code is here. Here you can see all the bricks. So the Mason bricks, the template actually I'm using. The idea is also that maybe you want to use your own, and then it should be possible to configure in your pubspec YAML to use another one, and then you can maybe just fork it because you maybe want to add stuff to it for your company, I guess. And then the packages, this is the embedding, the CLI, and this is the example project actually I'm doing. Oh, I didn't know it was animating. Made it long time ago. Are there questions?
I'm super excited about
Mhm.
seeing something like this come up. It's definitely hard to get started. Definitely, if you don't have a
yeah.
Flutter background, we should try to make this as easy as possible for for the frameworks on which we are embedding our
Mhm.
Flutter app. We're eventually the guests on their platform, so
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to see the web implementation,
Mhm.
and if I can help with that,
Okay,
I would
cool.
love to.
Yeah. Yes.
That's all I wanted to
Yeah.
say. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, indeed. The React Native one is generating a module file, TGZ, I think. And yeah, that's something you can just give to your React Native developer, and and you can start.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting.
Mhm.
It seems reasonably easy to bring like a widget from Flutter to like a native app, but how much more difficult is this when you want to bring like a whole Flutter app or a whole SDK that depends indeed like on hundreds of packages to like a native app? Is that even possible, or is that something we should not do yet, or is it something you already did with your company?
I think the podspec in the podspec file or the podspec log file, you can see how much native libraries your module is actually using, and I think for InvestSuite we are 25 like PDF viewer, lots of stuff there, and it's becoming big, of course. The SDK itself, also for Cocoa Pods, it has to package as a debug version, as a profile version, and a release version. So those are actually 3 copies. It's getting very big, but in the end, the IPA file or the APK file, it contains 10 megabytes of the Flutter engine, and then depending on the source code you have, could be 2 megabytes or 10 if it's really large, and then you also have the assets, but that's also in all applications, I think. So, what we also always say to the person that has to implement it, you can already start the engine in the background. The user will not really see it. So the moment that you start, he will open the Flutter widget, it's instantly there. So that's otherwise you can run the engine at the moment you need it, but then you have loadings, of course.
Yeah, having spent quite a few hours doing the same thing, I'm very happy that you moved it into a package to make it easier. I think it's very impressive. Did you manage to get the meta channels automated now for React Native, or not yet?
The plugin itself, what you get is you have a method where you can just invoke something, and you can pass some data to it. At this moment it's like that, and you can return data. I wanted to make it very generic at this moment, and then decide on if it's going to be Pigeon or gRPC or maybe something else. But I think at least I wanted to give you the very generic way of communicating, and that should, and then add an extra layer on top of it if needed.
So you probably develop your Flutter module first, and then you hand it over to like the React development team.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't think I missed it, but if there's a lot of communication between the Flutter app and the native app, how do you test all these communications?
Yeah.
Before you are developing, before it's integrated into the native app.
Yeah, that's the idea of the example app. I'm generating an example app where you can say, oh, now the theme has to be this, something like that. But at InvestSuite, that example app is doing much more. You can say like now log in with this user, or in you have to.
It's like
you
your
have to be
test
able to
suites
test
before
all
you
the
can.
stuff.
Okay.
The example app is the starting point,
Yeah.
and then the idea is that you can add all your custom handovers just in a list or whatever you want, of course. And
Okay, that's
the
clear.
idea is also, that's why I also wanted this as a Flutter example app generator, that you can add it there. You as a Flutter developer just have to do Flutter run, and
Okay, I
test
missed that.
everything.
Yeah. Okay,
And
thanks.
I maybe want to add something to the questions that were asked as well. So I worked on it as well for quite some days, months even. But the important thing that we do at InvestSuite is we have not only an SDK that we ship, but we also ship a Flutter app, which we actually built the entire app in. So next to the Flutter app that we built, we also have then the Flutter module. So it's easier for us to test everything in the Flutter app, have an abstraction layer around all the meta channels that we do, and then have it implemented in React Native and in Android and in iOS correctly with Pigeon or anything else. But that makes it for us easier to debug, to test everything, and to do the handover as well. So I think that's also an important side note. We have a lot of abstractions between, for example, everything related to Firebase. A lot of dependencies can be conflicting, which makes it quite difficult. And I think even in the React Native and in the modules, we use not even Firebase or anything else. We try to use as much Dart and as less native parts as possible. So I think that's
mostly the super app.
We
call it mostly the super app. They are doing authentication, but also, for example, logging. We don't log. We just say to the super app, log this error or something like that. You can use Sentry, but also other analytics, Google Analytics. We don't connect ourselves to Firebase Analytics. We say like the super app, just use your analytics you want. Here is an event, and they can handle it.
And you want to make it as easy as possible. So that's also why, for example, we have a layer in Kotlin, a layer in Swift, a layer in JavaScript. So it's easier for developers to actually run everything. So Chris has done an amazing job, I think.
The thing is, we are already using it at InvestSuite, not this plugin, but a lot of other code generation stuff. Here I wanted to get the key out of it and make it available for other ones. Maybe try to get a better package that everybody can use, I guess.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah. Any other questions?
Maybe just a little add-on. It is actually possible to have mock responses on meta channels in widget tests as well. So you could wrap your module within a widget test and then have mock responses that just run every time on your CI/CD solution, just to make sure that you're it's still gonna work when you hand it over.
Cool. All right, thanks.
Yeah.